What is up guys, today we're going to be looking at why assassins are so good and then 5 of the best champions that fill this role right now. Now I do want to say sorry for not uploading much recently, but I have had exams and now they are over, so I'm back to 3 or 4 videos a week. Now first things first, what really is an assassin? Well, in my eyes, an assassin is a champion designed to remove one person from the fight with a huge amount of damage in a short space of time. So these are the criteria I use to look at what assassins are best right now. How hard do they snowball? How many items do they need to kill you? How much damage can they do and how long does it take? Can they kill everyone if they get fed? And finally, how easy are they to play? As you can gather, this is why they are so good in solo queue right now. Now if you get ahead, you will destroy everyone, and people make a lot of mistakes in solo queue which you can capitalize on and get the advantage you need. So first up, and probably the only assassin you can actually jungle to, is kha'zix. Now kha'zix is super popular right now, but for really good reasons. He's one of the hardest champions to shut down once he starts snowballing, and that makes him really good for solo queue. He can create advantages early with his isolation damage, he has cleanup potential with his jump, and he can even win his lane early, which is rare for a melee assassin. Now his lane phase is somewhat weak, which is why right now I think he's probably better in the jungle than he is mid lane. He can clear very quickly, he has good ganks, and he can duel the enemy jungler extremely well. It kind of turns it into more can he snowball himself more than can I shut him down, which is really scary. So instead of putting these in an order, I'm just going to give them a grade for each criteria I mentioned earlier to show you how good I think they are and where they fall down. So he snowballs really hard and he only needs 1 or 2 items to be able to kill anyone. He does a lot of damage, but it does take him longer to kill someone than other burst champions. He can carry a fight by himself with his resets and his damage is pretty easy to get off. So as with any assassin, the hardest part about playing him is choosing when to enter the fight, as if you do it too early and you don't get your reset, you are well and truly screwed. kha'zix can't really afford to build defense at all, as he needs to keep building offense to stay relevant in the game, which means that if you do manage to catch him before he kills you, then you'll probably kill him quite quickly. Finally, the biggest reason why kha'zix is a bit of a risky pick is because if he can't get his reset in a fight, like if you have a Zhonya's or a Guardian Angel, then he's pretty useless. So next up, let's talk about LeBlanc. Now LeBlanc is one of those champions that only really needs 1 item to start wrecking your face, which makes her especially deadly mid-game. It's not hard for her to kill her opponent mid-game or even early, which can get her rolling, and when you combine that with how good of a roamer she is, then the entire enemy team will start to cry. Not only does she have an insane amount of damage, but she's also pretty safe too. Her distortion or her W makes her really hard to gank, and if she is in a really sticky situation, then she can even use it twice with her ultimate. This huge damage and how hard she is to shut down early is why she's so strong right now. Out of all the assassins on this list, she probably has the strongest lane phase, but is a bit weaker late game when it rolls around. So the grades then, she probably snowballs the hardest out of all of these assassins, as she only needs 1 item to one-shot someone. She can output a lot of damage and her rotation is less than a second. She does struggle to carry fights completely by herself though, as once she has used her full rotation, she doesn't have that much damage left. Her basic rotation is very easy to use, but there is definitely a high skill ceiling for all of her different combinations and dukes you can pull off too. Now I did just mention it, but one of her biggest weaknesses is that once you've used your rotation, you aren't as useful as other assassins. This is why people think she has a bad late game, because if she can't one-shot someone, then she really isn't that effective. In reality, she isn't as bad as people think, as she can still silence, root and deal good damage, but it's not as good if you reach that point where she falls off. Now another problem that kind of comes from this is that if you don't actually get ahead early, then you're unlikely to have a huge impact, even if you do end up free farming. Now this is why someone like Ziggs is a really good pick against her, because he can just farm with his Qs and he will eventually outscale LeBlanc. So let's move on to a couple of uncommon picks. Now first up we have Katarina, and I'm honestly going to go out there and say that I think she's really strong right now and she will become a popular pick very soon. She has an amazing amount of damage with few items, she has great snowball potential and probably the best cleanup with her resets, and can carry a game completely by herself. Now her early lane phase is not that strong at all, but once she gets going it's very hard to stop her and she doesn't even need to be fed to be effective. This is one of the reasons why I think she is so good. If she gets fed then she'll dominate anyway, but if not then she still has the potential to clean up a lost fight and carry. In this way she's kind of like a ticking time bomb for the enemy team. If you drag the game out and let her farm, then eventually she is going to get a few items and kick you right up the arse anyway. I could keep talking about her strengths, but honestly she does a ton of damage and can reset those damage cooldowns to use it on other people, so what really more do you need in an assassin? So for her grading then, she snowballs really hard, and because of the scaling on her ultimate, she scales really well into late game. Now because of this scaling though, it does mean that she needs more items than others to do damage. She can output her damage pretty quickly, with the only sustained damage in her kit being her ultimate. Her resets means that she can easily carry fights by herself, but the resets are actually tougher in itself to pull off, and so she's slightly harder to play than other assassins. Now her biggest weakness is crowd control. You can probably say that for most assassins, but anything that interrupts Katarina's ult will completely shut her down. This is really the only way to beat her in a team fight. You have to save your knockbacks and a CC for when she ults in, because if she gets that full channel off, you are going to be dead. The other main weakness she has is her laning phase. If you put her with a bully like LeBlanc, then Cat will get stomped, and she really needs items to be effective. While I did say earlier that you don't need to be fed, you at least need to be farmed to have a chance of carrying. So another uncommon pick right now is Akali, and as you'll see on the screen, Voidboy absolutely wrecked with it. Now Akali is notoriously a risky pick because you have to dive into the enemy team to do damage, and if you're behind then they're just going to turn around and kill you. Saying that though, she does snowball really hard, and I mean she only really needs a gunblade and suddenly she can screw your entire team. Her laning is pretty strong after level 6, and there is little you can do to shut her down once she gets going, because if you try to gank her when she's ahead then she'll probably just kill you both. If you don't help that lane though, then Akali will just keep killing them over and over and getting stronger, and so you're in trouble whatever you do, which is really hard to deal with. So grades wise then, she snowballs very hard with only one item. She does take longer than others to output her damage, as she needs to wait for a Q cooldown to do the most damage possible. Her damage is ridiculous, which is why she can carry by herself in fights, and her ultimate resets, and it's not difficult to do the damage with her. Her biggest weaknesses are falling behind and pink wards. Now I mentioned earlier that she has to dive into the enemy team to do damage, so if you're behind or if they're pretty strong then you're going to struggle to stay alive. The other problem is that any good team you play against will buy pink wards, and as soon as you drop your shroud then they're going to drop a pink and suddenly you're exposed. This is why Akali is a riskier pick than other assassins, because you really need to snowball to be effective. It turns into more of, can I kill them before they kill me, and if the answer is no, you've probably lost the game. So next up we have Zed, and while he used to be a lot stronger, he is still a good pick. He's probably the most difficult assassin to play on this list because it's hard to get his damage rotation off, and he also is one of the only ones who relies very heavily on skill shots with his Q. Zed's new ultimate means he can escape after dealing a lot of damage to someone. He snowballs very hard once he gets his items. He is a great split pusher and can outduel pretty much anyone. Now Zed runs on energy, so he can outpush most AP champions early game and then poke them down under turret. Once Zed has reached a few items, he can start split pushing, and it's very hard to shut him down. Now split pushing does take a completely different mindset when playing an assassin, because you have to know when to take risks and when to play safe, but you can win the game by yourself by split pushing as a semi-fed Zed. Now grades wise, he doesn't really snowball as hard as other champions and requires more items than others to dominate the game, but when he does get those items he's arguably stronger. It takes a little while to output his damage, and even longer for his death mark to actually proc and kill the target. He can carry a game by himself, either by assassinating in team fights or split pushing, but it's more difficult to get his damage off. Now his main weakness as an assassin is getting out and still being useful in the fight after killing someone. He has to dive right into the middle of the enemy team, use his rotation and passive, by which time most teams will have focused you down. Now this is the other problem Zed has in crowd control. Once he dives in, he needs to use his abilities to make his ult effective, and if you lock him down then he can't use his abilities, but he'll also probably die because he doesn't really build defense. The final thing that is really good against Zed, and most people don't think of, is a tanky damage champion like Renekton or Shyvana. Now these can survive his ultimate damage and then turn around and kill Zed, and that's basically impossible for Zed to deal with. So that wraps up my video on assassins, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now I'm back to my normal schedule, so please let me know down below what videos you guys still want to see from me, and I'll catch you in my next video.